In today's video, we're going to use polyester thread to re-hemp the joints on your bagpipe. Stay tuned. Well, hello everybody, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident bagpiper. If you like this kind of content, please think about giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. I also teach online bagpipe lessons if you want more personalized instruction, but more on that later. Now, I've become somewhat famous or perhaps infamous in various bagpipe online forums and such for being the guy who uses polyester thread instead of either traditional hemp, the yellow stuff, which is actually made of linen, or the various natural hemp that is now available on the market. But I have been a big fan of this polyester for many years now, and the original video I had on that is now like 9 years old, and not that it's really changed the process, but I thought an updated video could help everybody, and there's a few more tools available now that make it all a little bit easier. Now, you can see in the video right here, I compare all three: traditional hemp, the yellow stuff, the old-fashioned hemp that's now available, and polyester. And I talked the pros and cons of all of those in that video. But suffice it to say, at the end of the video, I still find that the polyester thread wins for all the things I need it to do. One of the biggest things and benefits of the polyester thread is that it is impervious to moisture in any test I've been able to give it. It does not swell with moisture as it gets wet, and that is a huge bonus. Now, one of the cons I hear is that, one, this is rough and it's going to scar or otherwise wear away the bores of your bagpipe. I have a bagpipe in circulation now. It's currently owned by a student, but it was mine, and it's had the same polyester hemp on it for 9 years now. And that bagpipe is played regularly, and it shows absolutely no signs whatsoever of any sort of wear. It has the original hemp. After about, 6 weeks or so, it really hasn't even had to be adjusted with the amount of hemp that is on it. And when I say hemp, I should say polyester. It's had the same polyester on it. Now, this set's primarily played indoors. If you're taking your set inside and outside, the wood itself can move, and that could change how much string you need on it. But suffice it to say, if it was wearing away, I would suspect strongly I would have had to added some for the student's pipes now. And when I look at the bore, it's absolutely pristine. I see absolutely no wear. And to note, I do use hemp seal on the outside of this, which is a lubricating wax on the outside of this. So I think that perhaps could mitigate any possible wear that the polyester is giving you. But again, I just don't see how there's no abrasives in this. I don't see how this is wearing anything down. If your experience is different, please comment below, and I'd love to see some photographic evidence that the polyester has caused harm. But in my increasingly prolonged experience, I just don't see it. The other complaint I hear about polyester thread is that it doesn't move. The very fact that it doesn't change really with moisture in particular, or even heat, weather, things like that, is a bad thing. But again, I'm not certain I agree. The metal on this certainly is moving, from temperature at least, but it's not moving at the same rate as the wood, and yet we actually put these various ferrules and bits, like the cap here, on to protect the wood from splitting and other kind of environmental harm from shifting and moving over time and having things inserted into it. So I would almost think that having a polyester layer right here that's not moving could almost act as a ferrule of sorts for the end of this pin. I don't see why I'd want that to move. I could be wrong. I'm not an engineer. I'm a bagpiper, but I don't see how the immobility of the polyester is in any way a bad thing. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to need to really do a good job of restringing these joints on your pipes. Now, I like to run 3 rolls of polyester thread, and this is 100% polyester, and it's just regular sewing thread. Some people like to try to use thicker stuff. I find thicker polyester threads tend to unravel when they kind of get untied or whatever, much more readily than this stuff does. And if you want to speed up the process, you can even add a 4th or 5th roll if you find that 3 isn't enough. Now, I'll tell you right now, if you're just using 1 roll, it's going to take you forever to wrap that because it's so thin. But if you have 3 at a time, it's going to wrap itself pretty quickly. And toward the end of the wrapping, if you need to get a little bit more fine-tuned and everything, you could always go down to a single strand to get exactly the tension on the joint you're wanting. I'm trying to go for a more traditional yellow hemp look on this set because it's kind of an old school set. This is the 2025 set of RG Hardy pipes that I reviewed recently. You can see it up here. And Alistair Dunn there was kind enough to actually let me keep this set, at least for the time being. So I'm going to be putting it through its paces, but I want it to be strung up the way I like to do it with the polyester. So that's what I'm doing today. All right, so step 1, you need your polyester thread. I like to have 2 or 3 different colors. In this case, I just have one contrasting one. I find if I use just one color for all of it, it looks just a little plastic, a little uniform. Having a contrasting color in there can give it just a little variation, make it look just a little bit more quote unquote natural or cool. But again, being thread, pick whatever color you want. The sky's the limit. The next thing you're going to need is some sort of cobbler's wax like this stuff right here. You need a way of adhering the polyester to the tenon itself once we remove this old hemp here. Some folks use really thin double-sided tape on there. That can work just fine, but you need a way of adhering the string, in this case thread, to the joint here. And I find this cobbler's wax here is the way to go. And then I also strongly recommend hemp seal. This is available all over the place. And when you buy it, it comes in a nice tub. I believe they're black now. This one's old and white. But all that's inside it is the wax ring that a toilet's installed on, just the very basic one. So if you have some sort of pharmacy jar or whatever, you can just buy a fresh wax ring, fresh, and stick it in here and it'll do its job just fine. And then something I have felt is kind of a game changer in this are these hemp compressors by Gale. There'll be a link in the description below on where you can get these. And again, boom, my review of these right there. These have become an invaluable part of my hemping process. It kind of squeezes all the air and any other whatever out of the joint as you're stringing it. So I don't have to go back nearly as often to make sure that that joint is, well, as snug as it can be. If you just let it kind of string on there and you're putting the parts together, you might find every few days you're having to add a little bit more string for quite a long time. This really speeds up the process. Now, on that note, I've had some people say, what about rolling it against a table or whatever else to try to compact it? I've heard that many people have found that successful. I've attempted it in the past and I didn't have any luck. It didn't seem to do anything more to compress it than just putting the top section on. It certainly didn't do the job that these hemp compressors have done. So check out that review if you want to learn more about these. Not required, but super useful for speeding up this process. And that's it. I find that 3 rolls like this should be just plenty to do all of your pipes. So we're going to start with the bottom of the joint here. And this is a time to bring up the reed. I initially was using polyester even on these, though to be honest, I'm finding just waxed hemp is easier, quicker to adjust on reeds itself. Now this one actually is an easy drone and still just has the rubber bit that's on there. It's fitting really nicely and snugly in this RG Hardy pipe. But if I were to put string on this, this is a case I would use just regular hemp as opposed to the polyester. Waxed hemp is available in a number of colors now, so you might be able to find a waxed hemp that complements or matches the color of the polyester string you might be using. So job number 1, let's take this old, totally waxed hemp off of this. If possible, I like to just find the end of it and unspool it. If I can avoid cutting it, that's always nice, but that's not always possible. If you cut, try to cut just the very outside layer of string. If you go too deep, you might kind of scar some of the grooves that are in the tenon. That's not the end of the world, but you know, it's not great. We want to try to not damage our pipes. And just by using my thumbnail, I was able to find the end and get this thing so I can unstring. And you can see right here, RG Hardy had used a double-sided piece of that thin tape, so it's already got some stickiness on there. That didn't come off, and it's still sticky. That's awesome. I'm still going to coat it in some cobbler's wax, but that's fantastic to see that it was already on there. And again, why do we need it stuck on here? There's a condition called twisting hemp, and when that happens, the hemp is no longer bound to this, and if it were to swell or somehow stick to another section of the pipe, it could basically get caught because, again, there are grooves on here, right there, and it's not going to let it come off. So if it's kind of stuck to the inside of this instead of that, it'll just spin forever and always, and there's not a great way to separate them. I mean, some people have stuck them in a fridge, maybe a hot pad on the one you're trying to expand and an ice pack on the one you're trying to contract, but I try to avoid temperatures with wood. I don't need anything splitting. The only other way is to grab one section, your friend grab another, and you pull really hard. You can imagine that might not go well either. So let's avoid that entirely. Make sure your string is sticking to the joint so you don't have to worry about separating something that might get stuck with twisting hemp. No luck here, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and cut a little bit of the string on this one. There we go, we have this ready to hemp up. Now, if you take the hemp off yours, and this is super nasty and has some old rotten hemp and stuff in there, that's not unusual. The yellow stuff tends to kind of get a little sluffy and crumbly and nasty as it gets old. I would take something like isopropyl alcohol on a rag and kind of wipe it off. I don't want to use any sort of oil in this case because I want, again, for things to adhere to this joint. So this is a case where I'd rather use something a little bit, harsher, again, like isopropyl alcohol to make sure it's cleaned off. Maybe just a little bit of damp water on a rag might be enough to clean it off, though make sure it's completely dried before you've gone and tried to apply this polyester. But you want to get any sort of slough out of here because any tendrils of regular hemp and whatever might be able to react to moisture and other things under there, swell up. And the whole reason we're trying to put this polyester on here is to avoid that. So make sure your tenons are nice and clean. These look fantastic because it's a new set of pipes and the double-sided tape is still sticky, so I'm leaving that tape on there for this. And just for ease of this video, I've removed the stock from the bag. You don't need to do that. It's really hard to try to show this on a full set of pipes. It's much easier to just show it with a single drone here, including a removed stock. To get started, you're going to want to pop one of these plastic ends off to kind of get the string going. And you can put the various rolls like in a container, whatever. I think previously I used a whiskey tin. I'm just going to kind of let them roll on the floor. It's not that big of a deal. But you kind of want them going where they want to go on their own. So we're going to start with the fitting between the bottom joint and the stock. And this is the fitting you want tighter than the tuning fitting. So there are two levels of tension we're looking for in our joints. We need to be able to readily tune the top section with just a couple of fingers and our thumb and not have the bottom twist. Therefore, this joint has to be a little looser than this one. Now, just because I want this one snugger, though, I don't want it so tight that it takes like both hands and a lot of might. I'm not trying to split anything. It just needs to be snugger enough that when I twist the top, it doesn't make the bottom want to turn or pull out as well. All right. I have all three bits of hemp here, and rather than taking like the next 5 minutes to try to align them, I'm just going to go ahead and take a pair of scissors and cut them so they're all right at the same length when I start. And this is where the cobbler's wax comes in. I'm going to take the first, I don't know, foot, 14 inches, about that much, the cobbler's wax, and I'm just going to run it through until it starts getting kind of sticky. Some cobbler's waxes are so filled with pitch, they'll absolutely turn black, and that's a great thing. This cobbler's wax here was made by a friend, and I'm not sure what their proprietary blend is. And while it's dark here, it does not transfer a lot of that darkness to the string, whether it's polyester, hemp, or whatever you're using. But it does get quite sticky, which I really like. But for most that are available, this will actually start turning black. But you can feel it. It starts getting sticky. So to get started, all right, let's do this. I like to lay it kind of vertical against the whole thing. So it's going straight up and down against the joint. Hold that in place with a finger and then do a simple wrap. And then once I've gone around it even once, now it's being held in place right there. And I'll do a couple of wide wraps holding that whole vertical bit down. And then when I get to the bottom, I want to make sure that there is a gap. Some older pipes, this entire thing might be grooved, or it might be grooved all the way to the mount. You want to leave a few millimeters between the mount and where your string is, regardless of the string you're using. You don't want the hemp to start splaying out onto the mount. That's going to keep it from seating the actual part. It won't seat all the way onto the stock. And the stock is not just a holder for the pipe. This is a specific length, width, and everything for the performance of the drone itself. So you want to be able to have this be seated completely. So make sure there's a little gap between your string and the bottom. Modern pipes are pretty good about actually having a gap where you can see there's not grooves. Older sets, not always so much. So you might have some grooves at the bottom that don't have string. That's just fine. You don't have to just match them because. And some people at this point like to go groove by groove. I kind of go in these relatively wide swaths here. And I'm just trying to kind of fill in as I'm going around where I see gaps. But that being said, notice I have the string going through these fingers. I do this a lot. I kind of have some calluses here. I don't know if you could wear gloves and you really get the feel, but you want to put this on with some tension. Like I'm not about to snap it in two, which I could totally do. I mean, I'm not strong. This stuff's fairly easy to break. But at the same point, I'm not just trying to like flop it on like this. I want to make sure that I'm almost kind of like cutting the string into itself. And I'm kind of constantly turning the joint as well as I'm spinning it on here to make sure that I'm not like building up a huge amount. And then once I get some basic kind of coverage, and I see there's no huge gaps in the string, so that's relatively even. It's certainly not filled in. I'm going to, well, one, hold the string, not break it, hold the string, and see. Now, that's not even close to fitting, but different pipes have different diameters to this section here, and it might not take as much string as you think. So you don't want to waste string or time by putting too much hemp on it. So that gives me an idea that I have quite a long way to go. The next step, as I add string to this, I want to build up the top and bottom, or bottom and top. It doesn't really matter which way you think about it. But either end, I want to build those up more than the middle right now. It's almost like I'm building like two O-rings of string around there. I want it to have a nice fit near the mount. Again, not all the way against the mount, but near the mount. That will keep it from wanting to wiggle that way, as well as the bottom, you know, just because that's where the air is really stopping. If you try to do the whole thing at once, the middle often gets kind of a bulge. I want to go through and add to the middle at the end once I have a really good fit with the top and bottom being, you know, more or less the strength and tension on here we're looking for. If you notice that it starts going below where you want it, just unwind it. It's not that big of a deal at this point. It's easier to adjust now than when the whole thing's done. So you can see here, it's more on the top and bottom of the section here. How are we fitting? I can actually start feeling it grab just a little bit. We obviously need more, but we're getting there. Okay, now we're starting to get, it's actually fitting on there. Notice it's not falling off. This is still looser than I need the stock fitting to be, but we're getting much, much closer. Now I'm freely adding a little bit more to the middle because I can see that it's actually kind of indented. We're going to want it flat at the end. Now we're starting to get a nice fit there. It doesn't need much more. We're getting pretty close on those top and bottom sections. And you can actually see maybe a little bit right here that actually some of the black wood, whether it's the oil dust, whatever it might be, is actually starting to wear onto the polyester string. I'm not saying this is that wear that's going to tear it apart. This will happen with any type of string you put on there, I promise you. But you can actually see where it's touching, which is great. You want to now start adding hemp to the places it's not touching. If it's bright yellow, green, blue, whatever color you're using, then you want to add string to those areas until you see just a little bit of pickup of blackwood debris or whatever that is on the other sections. And I'm going to test fit it again. And again, I'm just holding the string as I do it. So we're starting to get pretty good here. I'm pretty happy with that. I wanted to take a moment and thank the members of my Patreon community. You'll see their names scrolling up now. These folks contribute monthly to the channel. I'd love to add your name to this list. Seriously, these videos here would not be possible without all the support of the members of the Patreon community. So thank you so much. Now it's time to break out these hemp compressors. Now, there's 3 different sizes when you buy these. For the most part, the ones that go into the stocks are going to use the large size. I would suggest you put it around perhaps your thumb because it's so big and gently squeeze to feel how much tension you're really putting on there. You could squeeze this thing really hard and put more tension on this than you might think. So have an idea of how much you're putting on here. We do want to compress this, but we don't have to go crazy. So I'm going to go ahead, put this on here and just give it some squeezes, but I'm not forcing it all the way down. And turn it. I'm not trying to like get these to like touch each other or use all of my strength. And then just after a few squeezes with that, when I put it in here, now it's clearly very loose. Why? Because it compressed all of that extra air and space between the threads out. So now I can go ahead and add more string to the whole thing, which ultimately is great because this is going to mean we have to add less string later. And no, I'm not brought to you by Big Polyester. I have no dog in this hunt. You put the material on your joints that you think would work best. This is what I think works best, and I want to share it with you guys, but no harm, no foul. You want to do whatever. They're your pipes. Do what you want. Okay, now, even with that hemp compressor on there, I'm starting to feel a nice, pretty snug fit. I can still see that it's really contacting most at the very top here. That's where I actually see the most color change, you know, the pickup from the stuff inside. So I'm going to avoid that section and start adding string again to the rest of it. But before I test fit it, again, a couple squeezes with the hemp compressor. Yeah, now we're talking. Now notice, like, it's taking both hands, but I'm not working overly hard. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more. because we're going to put just a little bit of hemp seal on this, which is going to lubricate it a little bit more and make it a little easier to slide in. So one last bit here. I'm going to actually, before I even break it off, I'm going to add just a little bit of hemp seal, and I'm not adding that much. Look, it doesn't take very much of this stuff. And one more test fitting. And that, my friends, is about as good as it gets. I am super, super happy with that. There's a little gap right there, boom, between the thread and the joint. So we're ready to finish it off. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and cut the string now. Give myself, I don't know, a foot, 14 inches, something like that. Because we're going to tie a couple of half hitches on here. I've now cut, I don't know, about 14 inches or so off. And we're going to tie a half hitch or a double half hitch. Either works fine. We're going to go around, make a loop with our, so I'm going around my thumb. I wish this wasn't quite so small, but it is what it is. Going around my thumb, then again around the joint, and then I'm kind of pushing the thread through the loop I just made. I'll have a diagram on screen of what a half hitch looks like. It's really hard to show. But when you're done, you get a little knot that finishes it off. And then from there, you're just going to cut it a couple millimeters above it. Don't cut it right at the knot or it's going to untie itself over time. But, you know, give yourself, I don't know, 3-4 millimeters. It doesn't need a lot. Just a little tail on there like that. And then you can even use just a little bit of hemp seal to stick that down. And you have this nice, wonderful, clean-looking joint, whatever color it might be from your string. Now, what I was saying earlier, you can kind of see a little bit of the blackwood transfer on here. That's just part of life with a bagpipe. Unless you have a poly bagpipe, you won't see anything then. You might see it kind of getting a little flatter. This is a reason to not use black or anything overly dark. It's fine if that's what you want, but you won't be able to see that, and that really can help speed up the process of putting the string onto the joint. And again, when I put it on, just a nice, snug fit. It readily comes off, but that's not going to move unless I make this one super tight, which I'm not going to do. So let's do that tuning joint. I also teach online bagpipe lessons through any number of video platforms. Go ahead and contact me at www.commandyourbagpipe.com or email me at the address you see here, and we'll get you going. I'm working with folks from all over the planet, and I hope to work with you soon. All right, let's move on to the tuning joint. The only difference here is how much string we're going to add. We're going to add slightly less because we want not nearly as tight of a fit because, again, we need to be able to adjust this one readily with just 2 fingers and a thumb. If your tuning joints are tighter than that, take some string off of them. So again, I've ran about, 12, 14 inches through the cobbler's wax until it was nice and sticky. Again, this cobbler's wax doesn't particularly turn black, but it's definitely sticky. I'm going to, again, start with it vertical against the joint, like that. Hold it in place until I get a loop around it. And at that point, it's kind of holding itself in place. So now we're ready to start stringing. And the same rules apply. I'm going to kind of put a little bit of thread against the whole joint, making sure I don't go above or below the sections of grooves. Now, again, if your grooves go all the way to the top, I haven't seen that on one of these, but if they do, you're going to want to give yourself, again, a break between the hemp and the end so it just doesn't come off easily. But once I have relatively even coverage on this joint, and again, I got tension in my hands, kind of cutting the string into itself. Let's see if that top goes on there. Yeah, it's not. There's no tension on it right now. So we can go ahead and start adding more string. Again, I'm going to start with the top and bottom, making sure those fit very, very nicely before adding some in the middle to make it nice and smooth and not have a ball of hemp with a big fat center, which can make everything a little topsy-turvy as you're tuning it. Try another test fitting. Nowhere near. Oh, now we're starting to get somewhere. Look at that. I can hold it at the bottom, so this joint is only being held in place by the tension of the thread. And look, I can readily turn it here. Now, it goes loose, boom, because I haven't added any in the middle yet. But I want to make sure that I was getting some good tension. And one of the ways you can tell if you have enough on the top, because right now it's more right here I'm feeling, if you put it down past all the hemp and you can feel it wiggle back and forth, it means it's probably got enough hemp here, but not at that top. You might want to add a little bit up here until when you put it down, again, like this one right here, I have no wiggling back and forth. It's nice and firm because it has contact both at the top of the joint and bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some to the middle until it's visually more or less even up and down. I'm not worried about the hem compressor quite yet. That's feeling really nice. I like that a lot right there. So again, grab it down here. Very nice. Now let's take the small hem compressor here and see if that's the right size for this tuning joint. And it is. And again, if you want to test it on your finger first to see the tension, by all means do that. Don't hurt yourself. Don't squeeze too much. But understand how much tension you're putting on this. We want to compress it down. We don't want to absolutely crush it. And as previously, if you can see where the blackwood has been interfacing with your string, that can go a long way to showing you where you need to add string next. After the hem compressor though, while it's still snug, it's not really wanting to hold itself in place. So now I'm going to more or less add hemp evenly, filling in any gaps I see visually in the hemp or any places where I don't see any sort of blackwood transfer. But now, before any test fitting of the top section, I'm going to use that hemp compressor. If you don't have a hemp compressor, just use the top section of the joint. It's just fine. You might have to add some string later. It's not that big of a deal. Pipers didn't have these until very recently. They're just super handy. I think that's pretty good. Now, it seems maybe a little tight, but again, I have not added the hemp seal yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of the hemp seal to this joint, and then again, do a test fitting of this top. And just like that, I can move this readily with just 2 fingers and my thumb, and yet not moving it all down here. So I have the fitting here I want, and it doesn't have to go all the way down. You're not going to be tuning it all the way down there. I would try from about, I don't know, 1/4 inch of hemp or so to maybe 1/8 of an inch below. That's about the range you need it tuning at. The chamber in here, even on a new set, might not be perfectly parallel. You need it to have the right tension in the range you're going to be tuning it. Going all the way down isn't useful. It puts a lot of stress on this pin if it were to get tight. So don't worry about that. Just have it in the range you're going to be tuning your joint at. And at this point, that is absolutely lovely. I am a huge fan of that. So I'm going to, again, cut this, give myself enough room in the thread here to tie a nice little half or double half hitch. I don't know if I can show that any better this time than last. Going around my thumb, go through the hole I make. And now I got just a nice little knot. And you get a lot of thread. I'm not really worried about this waist bit here. I'd rather make sure I have enough string left over so I can tie a good knot to finish it off than like not have quite enough string and I have to unravel some when I have the fitting and tension I already want. Again, give it just a couple millimeters between it. And I need some new scissors. These aren't really cutting. There we go. And maybe just a touch more hemp seal to hold that little bit down. And top section goes on. And just like that, I have a nicely done bit of string on my bagpipe, and I'm ready to go and get the rest of this hemped up. Now for the blowpipe and the chanter, again, those are stock fittings. You want them pretty snug. The chanter is the trickiest of all of these to get because it's got to be snug enough that it holds itself in place against gravity. It's the only joint pointing down, holding something up. And yet, you know, you want to be able to take it out readily enough that you're not damaging your reed by forcing things. Also, again, I like picking polyester thread that matches a bit of the wax temp because what I like to do on the chanter in particular is just put 1, maybe 8 at most inch section of wax temp on the outside of that joint. It will move and shift just enough with moisture to give it just enough bite that I'm not worried about, you know, gravity pulling it out. The polyester has been smooth enough over the years that one time when I wasn't paying attention, the chanter was a little looser than I thought, and it came out with a fully polyester joint. So, like, why would you use polyester there? I still like the fact that the joint is more or less stable and there's just enough little hemp on the outside of it for like enough bite that I don't have to worry about that. Now, the real answer is hold your pipes in a way where your chanter's not dangling. I was being a big fool in walking around with my pipes and the chanter just hanging out. And thank goodness nothing was ruined in the process. I got lucky. Don't do that. Hold your pipes correctly when you're carrying them around. Maybe I'll make a video on how to carry your pipes around. But Again, the blowpipe and chanter are stock fittings. You want them to be snug. I don't recommend any sort of hemp on the blowpipe because that is the wettest, nastiest joint of all of them. If anything, if you're going to use the polyester on just one joint on your pipes, perhaps you like how regular hemp feels on your tuning joints. That's fine. But if you want to put it on your blowpipe to make sure that it remains easy to take out, doesn't swell with the moisture that's going to be generated, that might be an idea. And the final thing I want to bring up is the middle tenor. I like to add a contrasting string to the bottom wrapping so I never have to worry about mixing it up in the future. So if I'm doing 3 spools of yellow, I might switch out one of those spools of yellow for a black or contrasting color. It doesn't have to be completely different, but enough that when you look at it, you know that it's the middle and you don't have to worry about mixing it up, because the parts of the pipe from the stock to the middle section to the top, they get used to vibrating together as an instrument. And if you're to swap them out, it might sound kind of dull for a little while until the new combination gets used to vibrating together. I like to keep my pipes together as they were, sent to me initially. I don't know if there's any magic in that. Maybe I'm just superstitious enough, but I like to know that my middle is my middle and it stays my middle. There you go, everybody. An update on how to restring your pipes using polyester. The pros of polyester, I don't really see any cons except for the fact that you have to tie it off at the end or it does tend to unspool. But that is a small con to pay for what I feel are all the pros that this material gives you. It doesn't swell with water. It's thin enough that you can get exactly the fit you want. There's any color in the universe you might want to pick from so you can really personalize your pipes. And it's readily available. You can go to any kind of store. I recommend just finding some sort of hobby store near you. I got mine from Hobby Lobby. I used to say Joann's, but they're out of business now. But in any case, any place you can get fully polyester thread, you can buy this and look at the colors in person. Finally, you want 100% polyester thread. There are some threads out there that are cotton core with polyester on the outside. If the polyester on the outside were to somehow break, I don't know if that's really possible, but if it were, the cotton in the middle would be able to swell just like any of the other natural materials. It's the fact that this is an unnatural material that I like because it's more stable on the joints. And if you haven't heard already, I do have my Bagpipe Basics Series exercise manual available on Amazon. Go check that out. It's 98 pages, all the stuff in the Basics Series. And whether you're a beginning piper or more advanced, some really useful exercises in here. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Until next time, I'm Matt Willis. Cheers.